trash. These come in cases of 8 and 16. You can buy them online. Just kidding, Wesley. We don't have any sponsors.
Man, I wish we did.
I mean, you almost want to just give them free credit just to make yourself look more professional.
Yeah, right. By the way, if anybody from Bucked Up happens to see this, we are open, and I love your drinks.
We're having a guest on, our first guest. And we're going to be looking on, if you remember our first episode where we talked about leadership and corruption. I'm kind of going with the idea about how power corrupts, and keep thinking ultimate power. That's not it. Power corrupts.
Ultimate power corrupt, or absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's all right. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So,
yes.
The guest we're having on today is my brother, and the reason that we're kind of looking at Wesley coming on is I've seen his life. I've seen a lot of things that he's gone through, and I've been able to see this guy continuously find himself in leadership, and the reason he's in leadership is because he's a leader that people look up to, they love, and he is just walks the line, and everybody knows that he's not trying to do anything corrupt in the background. And my view of that has been that I get to see his inner life a little bit, and so he is who he says he is, and I know the result of his life is a result of his inner life, his walk with God. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing: is Wesley? I've known Wesley as long as I've known you.
Yeah,
and
1,000 years.
Yeah, it feels like it. When you go back to what we've, look back at where we were and where we are now, it seems like an eternity. It's
weird. It's like a whole different life.
Yeah. But I have known Wesley for a very long time, and, it's not to say, what all you said is not to say that he's perfect by any means. Nobody is, but he finds himself in positions of leadership because he just naturally has that, that thing, right? That everybody talks about. Like he's personable. He is empathetic.
Yeah.
And he knows how to make people feel like they're heard.
Yeah.
Which is something I don't have.
I mean, I think
I don't have
you
that.
do more than you think, but
well, maybe, but I have to be in the mood for it. But but no, he has those things, right? That's why he's finding himself in positions of leadership, and he's a hard worker, which is another thing. So he may come into a place and be, down here somewhere.
Yeah.
But he's a hard worker, and he has those other qualities with it. So he finds himself kind of being moved up into positions of authority, and he has the staying power of being in authority because he has the
big thing,
the ethics behind the leadership.
Yeah.
Which a lot of leaders, and that isn't necessary to be in leadership, as we see with these people that we talk about on this show, and we'll be talking about more on the show, is you don't necessarily have to have the ethics.
Yeah.
But it helps when you do.
It does.
Because you may be in a position of leadership for a while without the ethics, but eventually you'll get caught.
Yeah.
And then the downfall comes, and then it's shame and news and lawsuits, and it's just no fun for anybody.
Yeah. I think of, there's a kind of a definition of a leader that I heard years ago. And when I think about this, I think about Wesley, and the definition was a leader is not somebody who makes all the right choices. He's somebody, or she is somebody who is able to make the choice at the hard decision point and then make that choice the right decision. And
if I may,
yeah,
something I learned when I was in basic, which don't take the shirt the wrong way in the fact that I said I was in basic. I didn't get to stay, okay? Health has a lot of determination in your staying power in the military, but especially when they calls it. But
whoops,
yeah, whoops on their part. It wasn't whoops on my part.
Yeah.
Anyway, something I learned, one of the drill sergeants told us was, listen, you don't have to make the right decision. Just make a decision.
Yeah.
Don't worry about, well, what if I make the wrong decision? And then you have no decision.
Mm-hmm.
Indecisiveness will kill you.
Yeah.
It's okay to make the wrong decision and you die or other people die. Yes, it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this is obviously an extreme situation talking about war. It's not exactly the same thing. But yes, people might die from that, but you made a decision, and that is the point.
Mm-hmm.
And he used the example of crossing like a road, right? And you're in an alleyway. There's people over to your left. There's people to your right. You're trying to get across to the other alleyway. And either you stay there and you're in a freaking kill pen. You're in a death zone because you have buildings up above you.
Yeah.
Or you cross the street where you're clear.
Yeah.
And sitting there wondering, but if I make the call to go across this street, me or my men die,
mm-hmm.
and you die anyway, because the enemy's up above you looking down going, well, this is easy,
mm-hmm.
then that is the worst decision. Then it's much better to say, why did you cross the street? Because we would have been clear over there. Okay, we get that.
Yeah.
Instead of, why didn't you cross the street? Well, there was, we had combatants on the left, combatants on the right. What was, I couldn't, I wasn't quite sure. Well, now it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And your indecisiveness killed people.
Yeah.
In the business world, in the church world, in any position of leadership, decisiveness is extremely important.
Yeah.
Even if it's the wrong decision, you can recover from a wrong decision.
Yeah.
You can't recover from death. And I mean death business wise. Like, look at Blockbuster.
And I mean death, business wise, morally, like you get caught doing, immoral things in a position where you're, held to a higher moral standard. That's gonna ruin your entire, future in that line of work or whatever. It can. But yeah, like I've seen Wesley be a person who, he deliberates when he needs to make the wisest decision that he can. And I've seen him decide on something that may not be popular. It may be, but what he decides, he's going to stick with it until everybody else around him knows that it was, the best decision that could have been made in the moment. And I think a lot of that has to do with his, like, who he knows he is, right? And so I think we're gonna hopefully get into what cultivates all of that. What is the what does he do that allows him to make those decisions the wisest he can in the moment, and then gives him the staying power, as Dylan was saying. And then what can we do? What can we learn from the life that he's living? And so, yeah, I'm excited. It's good to talk to my brother for sure, but I don't think I've ever been able to really sit down and have a conversation, mainly just because that's not what brothers do. We don't pick each other's brains.
Not that type of conversation anyway.
We can't, a lot of times it's like, well, hey, I know everything, so I don't need your opinion. But I'm excited to jump in here and pick Wesley's brain on that. So.
And it is something different from what we normally talk about. We do touch on the human trafficking side of things a little bit, but it's more of a leadership kind of conversation episode. Because that does play into it, and we touch on it because it does play into it. A lot of these cases, at least in the U.S., of human trafficking starts with somebody in a position of leadership exploiting somebody that is beneath them in the organization or the church or the school or the whatever. And so having that moral, that ground to stand on as a leader is important, to, not go exploiting
Or
people for whatever that exploitation might look like. So,
yeah,
it is a little bit different of a conversation from what we normally
yeah.
talk about, but it still touches on the normal.
And I kind of like that, to be honest. I want this. I want to be able to approach subjects that definitely have an impact in human trafficking, but maybe aren't being looked at by people who are dealing with human trafficking on a regular basis. So leadership is one of them. How do we deal with other things in self-care life? How do we deal with relationships, and how do we work through stuff like that? Those things don't particularly jump straight at you when you think of human trafficking, but I think they're important in the healing process. I think they're important in the understanding of the psyche of the individuals that we're dealing with, and so I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yep. All right. So I'm Dylan.
I'm JJ.
Get to it. 3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2, 1.
Go.
Alrighty. So, we are gonna have a guest on today. This is Wesley Jack. He is my brother. What we're gonna be talking about today is going to kind of shout back to an episode that we had a couple episodes ago about leadership and the corruption that oftentimes happens in leadership, and how we as Christians can cultivate an inner life that is going to help us overcome the temptations of corruption and to be leaders that the world needs us to be. And so having Wesley on today is there was thought put into that. There's a lot of people out there that I believe are good leaders, but not many of them have I had an in-depth look into the life of how they live, the standards they live by, and do they actually do what they say they do.
All
And
of
so,
this is to explain that it's not just nepotism that Wesley's on right now.
yes, that's a good explanation there too. So I'm excited to have Wesley on. Wesley, how about you say hi?
Hey, thanks a ton for having me on. This is which episode is this?
Is 3. So a couple episodes ago was episode 1.
You are the first guest that we have had, actually.
Man, this is a huge honor. So I'm pretty stoked to be on this very third episode and take the first place of the top guest you've ever had on the episode.
Yeah, you you definitely are the best guest that we have had. And those other 2 guests,
By far.
Dylan and myself, we're new enough to call ourselves guests, but you are by far the best one we've had.
Most accomplished, anyway.
Yeah. So Wesley, can you give us an idea? Just tell us a little bit about what kind of roles in leadership you're playing right now.
Yeah, so probably my biggest thing right now is um, doing ministry at our church, and so that's probably where I spend most my time. Whether it's curriculum development, video creation is kind of something that we've delved into more now as we're trying to create different courses for early discipleship. I lead our young men's group, and so I meet with them weekly, and we're going through a book now and kind of discussing the content. And then, of course, with that comes one-on-one discipleship and just having, real good phone calls and going on runs occasionally with one or two of them, and just good bonding time. So yeah, that's been probably the main stuff I've been delving into recently.
So I got a question that comes up as you're talking about everything. What's kind of shaped the way that you do discipleship? Where are you pulling ideas from, and what's like? Is there something that is? Yeah, I just like what's shaped it. What are you creating as you're discipling people?
Yeah. I think that maybe, I would be probably slow to say like, man, this person is really shaped it, or I'm taking this type of a style. But I really feel like just as God's maybe developed me over the years, He's giving me maybe a combination of intuition um, on how to handle situations and how to pour into people, and to really even through His Spirit be able
Mhm.
to sense kind of their needs. So I don't even know, I think it's less of a style and more of a or what shapes it, and more of a kind of almost like a throw up, and I've got to really lean on the Spirit um to help minister. I mean, we just had this one guy who just joined our small group, and he he used to be in the church, but now he's kind of come back to the faith, and actually very seriously this time. And he actually
Okay.
had a vision in a service, a church service. He
Mm.
he literally was just like basically almost out of body type of experience, in a sense, where he had like turned and saw Jesus, and Jesus beckoned him to come to him, and he
Wow.
like every step he took, he became younger and younger,
Mm.
until when he got to Jesus, he was this little child, and he basically was embraced by Jesus. And this was a guy who had been running from God for a good while in a lot of ways, living with his girlfriend, and really in a lot of toxic kind of a big toxic relationship. And so it was really, I mean, it's that's a unique situation for me to handle. But I mean, with the Spirit's leading, he really, things like that. He just, it's miraculous
Yeah.
how people receive just what they need, and it's not you that did it, and it was
Sure.
just
Yeah.
it's all God working through. And so a lot of it just feels honestly like a toss up in a lot of ways. I mean, you learn from your history, you learn from your experiences, and I think you develop as a person, so you can gain certain habits and maybe um some leanings in teaching style. But I really, yeah, I think God helping me need Him, putting me in positions where I really need Him, has really helped
That's awesome.
create how I approach it.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, can you hear me okay, Wesley?
Yeah, I sure can.
Cool. We actually talked about in a previous episode, I think, or maybe it's one that's coming up that we've already recorded, um, that failure is a path to success. No, it wasn't. It wasn't an episode. It was a conversation we had that wasn't recorded. That's what it was. Failure is a path to success, and to look at failure not as necessarily as failure, but as that road to success. That failure is not necessarily a bad thing as long as you learn from it. Have you had? Well, that's kind of a wrong question. I'm going to assume you have, but because everybody does. But have you had any failures, and what have you? I guess in what way did you learn from those failures to help you improve as you have moved forward in your ministry and in your life?
Yeah, I still have failures, believe it or not. And honestly, I
I'd be
don't,
concerned if you didn't, man.
I don't,
At this point, you've already lost your
yeah.
job at the church for admitting that.
God, I hope not. That'd be terrible if they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, it's funny because I don't a lot of times even notice my failures until I realize, like, I talk to people who are wiser than me, who have spoken to some of the same people that I've spoken to, and I realize they saw into their lives in a deeper way than I ever did. And so how I responded to their needs was actually maybe not totally wrong, but it wasn't quite tailored to what they were needing. And so I'm actually quite humbled um, by my limitations a lot of times. And I think a big way that I can treat that is just in a way the same way that I see it, which is by leaning on people who are wiser than me, who have had a ton more experience in ministry than I have. And it's, I mean, it really, I feel like I get sharpened every time, I have conversations with these kinds of men.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Like when you're engaging with people, what is your what is your mental posture? What is um your attitude as you sit down, you have conversations, you watch these guys perform ministry? What is the is it stuff that you're just catching kind of on accident, or is it things that you're looking for?
Talking about the people that I look to.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, the when I catch a lot of stuff, it's either one of two things. Um, we're discussing people who, like, for example, my wife's father is our pastor, so he's ahead of above me in leadership, and he kind of gives me direction in a lot of areas where he wants me to pour into, who he wants me to pour into a lot of times if he sees a specific need. And so we'll have conversations about what people are needing, maybe what they're going through, and and so that we can really team up and make the biggest impact in people's lives. And so probably casual conversation almost, where we're kind of um, sharing how we approached a certain situation. I just gain. He doesn't even realize, like, when he's speaking, I'm like, oh man, I totally blew it on that one. And I realized, like, this is maybe something that I need to address more in so and so's life or whatnot. And I think the other way that I end up growing a lot from them is when we disagree. And so, and not so much disagree, but though there's those times, but it's more like I want to understand where he's coming from better. And I already know, like, a lot of times where my position is, because I really do feel very confident in my amount of Bible study and how I've poured over the word. I've got the ability to critically think. And so whenever I come to a conclusion on something, I'm pretty firm in that conclusion, but I'm also
Hmm.
recognizing I can be wrong. There can always be more evidence that I'm not seeing. And so I will, even today we had a conversation about a Bible verse that may or may not have been in the original manuscripts. And so we were discussing it because we were considering maybe using it for a Bible study or not. And we were looking at the pros and cons of that. And so more it's fascinating because they're never heated, though they can get pretty serious sometimes. But conversations like that, I mean, you really sharpen each other because you're both very educated on a topic and you both really want the truth. And I think that's a really great recipe for development.
Yeah, that sounds good. I uh I think that's one of the biggest things that I actually enjoy hearing about when I'm reading leadership books or when I'm watching people that I really respect is how they engage in disagreements. Like I learn a lot from like there's actually a book that you told me, Mission the Men and Me. There's a good bit in there where they're talking about how creativity through disagreement happens, and I've ever since I've read that I've like had a curiosity about how people deal with disagreement. But
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I think disagreements show a lot about who somebody is, especially if you end up being on the wrong side of that disagreement. Are you going to be humble enough? Are you going to be humble enough to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe you know more
Yeah.
about this than I do, and I can learn something from you. Or are you going to hang on to your pride and your hubris and hang on to the lie that you tell yourself that you're right, and all that's going to do is stunt your growth. But a humble person, a smart person, a wise person can say, hey, you know what? I was wrong on this, and I think that I could learn something from you if I just humble myself and listen. So that's important.
I think it's even harder a lot of times when it's not coming from someone who's above you, but also, like, when you're maybe in a discipling position with multiple men, or several individuals, the accumulative knowledge of those people somewhere outdoes your own knowledge because you're just one man. And so I've
Yeah.
got guys who do study scripture, and I'm supposed to be the guy who knows all of it, and I don't. And so a lot of times they'll bring up things that I've never considered or even maybe studied in depth. And it's really humbling to have to be have to say like, I'd have to look into that and maybe even consider their proposition, and when they're the ones who brought it up and you had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. It's interesting we're talking about this, and I know humility and leadership go hand in hand, a good leadership, but it's interesting how there's a humility necessary to accept that you're wrong, but I believe there's also a humility that's necessary to stand on your beliefs too. Because if you're taking a stand on what you believe, you're sticking your neck out there, inviting people who think you're wrong to prove you wrong, and knowing that if you are wrong, you have to accept that as well. And so it's interesting that to be in a position of leadership, humility is kind of that double-edged sword that's going to allow you to be strong on your beliefs, but allow you also to continue to learn.
Yeah, I think that a really great view of humility, because a lot of people obviously think that humility can be like looking at yourself lowly or something, of course. And there's an aspect of that potentially, but I really think that humility is just seeing yourself soberly, so you recognize how strong you are in certain areas and how weak you are, and you are okay with that. Like
Yeah.
you're okay to start at that foundation and then move forward. And so just really having an understanding of yourself that's sober and being willing to deal with it, I think is a really, I mean, I think it just describes humility so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at yourself objectively is it's a difficult thing, and it's a lost art, I think, in today's world in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So we're going to take a really quick break here, but before we head out there, are you tired of feeling sluggish and drained throughout the day? Do you need to pick me up and to power through for your busy schedule? Well, let me introduce you to Bucked Up. So look no further there. Unbeatable energy, brain power, hydration, and no crash. These come in cases of 8 and 16. You can buy them online, put in the T.F.D podcast for your 10% discount. And thank you guys so much. We'll be back in a minute. Just kidding, Wesley. We don't have any sponsors.
Man, I wish we did.
I mean, you almost want to just give them free credit just to make yourself look more professional.
Yeah, right. By the way, if anybody from Bucked Up happens to see this, we are open, and I love your drinks.
So one of the things that we want to talk about is the corruption that is often found in leadership. And so one of the quotes that I know you're going to be familiar with is is power corrupts. And I'm off of it. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yes. So thank you, Wesley. I'm glad you know that. So
hey, Wesley, you want a hosting gig? You can always use a third.
Or replace this one over here. Now,
Nah.
Now the individual that kind of brought this up to us, she had gotten in trouble with the law, was sent to a Christian program, and in that Christian program, she met somebody. They got very close together. Once she graduates the program, she's excited to get her life back together, and she now has a friend that's going to help her succeed in this new life. Looking up, and that one friend was actually the individual that started trafficking her. And so when we're seeing situations like that where individuals are being trafficked by people that they trust, that they have seen and gone to because of the power that they had wielded in society and in their situation, there's a lot of questions on how we deal with that, because that is more often the case in the U.S., especially as people are more being trafficked by coercion from people that they trust rather than being taken against their will. So how do we deal with that is kind of what we want to talk on moving forward here. So I'm going to throw this over to Dylan, and he's going to kind of start us off in that direction.
Yeah, so basically, we all hear the stories of, the teachers that, take advantage of the students, or the youth pastor, the pastor that does the same thing, or we all hear the stories of the Catholic clergy members that do the same thing. So,
Yeah.
not to be unfair to anybody, just that is the stories anyway. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I guess my question is, how do we avoid, as leaders, as being in a leadership position, how do you avoid or maybe not necessarily avoid, but deal with the temptation to use your power in your position of authority to take advantage of people in whatever way that advantage looks like, whether it's sexually or just, whatever it looks like. But how do we avoid that and keep our leadership pure? Because we also see leaders who are not Christians. We see leaders that are, just not saved people, for lack of a better term, and they're great moral leaders with a sense of morality to their life. But then we see people who are spiritual leaders, and we have a problem with that. So how do we avoid that temptation, or deal with that temptation to stay a moral leader when we're in a position of power and authority over somebody else?
Yeah, yeah, and definitely, I mean, someone who's not a believer in Christ is, I mean, it's only by the grace of God and His image in them that they can even do the good that they do. And I wonder if, I mean, it makes a ton of sense to me that we would hear of a lot more moral failures in Christians,
Yeah.
mainly because, I mean, those are the people that the enemy are trying to bring down. I think of Ravi Zacharias, and it's just a tragic story hearing
Yeah.
how, I mean, he was one of the most famous, maybe the most famous apologist at the time. He's basically the Billy Graham of apologetics, and for about a decade or more, I mean, he was taking advantage of women,
Yeah.
and it's just so sad. And I think that probably that he didn't start out like that. I assume that it was one small compromise after another. And
Mm.
really, I mean, you have to stay so grounded. And I think part of that is viewing yourself soberly, like we were talking about earlier, knowing that you're not above failure. Like I can sense the potential evil within me. Like every human has great potential for great evil. And I like that scares me. It keeps me attentive. It keeps
Yeah.
me alert, as the Bible calls it. And I think that that's one thing, is viewing yourself soberly, and then also just maintaining, with God's help, a fear of God, knowing that if you don't stay alert and you fall, there is judgment to pay if redemption is not sought and gained. And so, yeah, just being sober minded, having the fear of God, and all that starts honestly in your daily habits, and who you create as yourself at the core.
And let's get into that. Speaking about Ravi Zacharias, so I remember reading that when that story broke, and I remember um, one of the, I don't know, I believe it was one of the ladies that he had taken advantage of, and she was saying that he told them, I believe this is what it was, that he said that he had served God for so long, and this was God's gift to him. And
Wow.
it's like, it's a very, like, when I read that, as much as I wanted to be like, wow, what a hypocrite, like, it was so eye opening to me. Like, I don't know how to put this. It kind of scared me. It scared me because I understand that positioning, where when you want something bad enough, you can make your entire worldview shift to make it available to you.
Justify it.
And so my question, I guess, moving into the daily habits, what do you do, Wesley? What is involved on a daily basis, on a weekly, yearly basis? What things are most important to you that help you keep a true north, help you have um, the mindset that you understand your heart is it's leading you astray. Your heart is not what you need to be listening to. So how do you get over your feelings and ground yourself in that truth? What are your avenues of doing that?
Yeah, a lot of times in order to do that successfully, it takes what is painful and so or uncomfortable. And so three things stick out to me immediately. It would be Bible reading, prayer, and accountability. And I mean, Bible reading sounds so boring, and I think to a lot of people it is. Um, and I think it's that way on purpose. I think that I know for me, I go through seasons where it's less engaging than I would like it to be. But I think that that has a lot to do with the spiritual warfare that we're in. But it's
Yeah.
vital nonetheless. Bible reading really grounds your mind so that when you pray, you're actually praying accurately. And so like prayer may not be Bible reading, but man, prayer is really the food to my soul. The my daily habits of prayer, I I cannot do without. If I do without, I really feel it. I really recognize it.
Yeah.
And it takes a toll on me and it does not take long. And then accountability, I used to really not be a fan of accountability because I grew up with guys doing accountability and it didn't help. It just kept bringing back to mind what I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And so for a long time was not a fan and I'm still not a fan of that accountability in a lot of ways. Like there's a good side and not great side to it. Um, but I know what's helped me the most. I still need accountability. So even if there's certain variations that help us in accountability more than others, accountability is still vital. And it took me a really long time to recognize that. In the season I'm at now, accountability is my wife. And so we don't do this perfectly, but I am in continual communication with her on the things, whatever season I'm in, on the things that are most tempting to me or the greater struggle. And one way we do that is by checking in on each other's emotions. And when I'm checking in with another person, it helps me stay grounded because I'm not just relying on my own thoughts that can reinforce themselves. And so I think bringing another person in there who you know you can trust to correct you because she cares enough about me to correct me is super important.
Yeah. That's awesome. Dylan, what you
Yeah.
got brewing over there?
I think I mean having somebody to be accountable to is extremely important. The Bible talks about it. Leadership talk, I don't know the word I'm looking for.
Gurus?
Leadership gurus, yeah, they talk about it. Having that accountability is extremely important. If you're not as lucky as the three of us are to have a spouse that you can be accountable to, finding a person that you can be accountable to is a challenge.
Yeah. It
So how do you find
good one. Yeah.
how do you know that the person how do you know how to identify somebody that you can be accountable to, somebody that you can trust that will correct you, that is on a moral standing that is strong enough for you to trust for that? How do you identify that?
It's an amazing question. And I immediately think of all the ads for counseling that's out there right now. And that's the idea that they're trying to get across. But it's I personally know it's bigger than just going into a chat room and trusting somebody that says they believe along the same lines as you. And so I'm interested, Wesley. What is your criteria? Has been through the years and even now that you who do you look to and what are you looking for when you're choosing accountability?
Man, it can get tricky when you're single. I think that a lot of times, if we don't find victory in a certain area, a lot of times it's just because we don't want it bad enough. And if accountability is the ticket to victory in a certain area in someone's life, sometimes you just got to get creative to figure out what that's going to look like. Because it's when you're not married, it's not very natural. And I know for me, like JJ, my own brother, has been, a person that I was able to confide in because I put very big restrictions on my own life. to what I have access to what I can view and see and indulge in. And so JJ had the ability to lock and unlock my phone. It was extreme accountability. I also had another friend who, um, if I was going through extreme periods of temptation, I would end up reaching out to this guy and just bringing it into the light, because bringing that into the light alone breaks chains just somehow.
Mhm.
And so you got to
Yeah.
get creative and figure out the people who will be willing to help you and how they can best help you.
Yeah. So, um, something that is, I know we're running short on time here. I just want to go ahead and, if you could, Wesley, if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, like, I'm in leadership, I want to be in leadership, I want to go and I want to do it well, right? I don't want to find myself 10 years down the line dealing with rape charges when I set out with all the good hopes in the world.
To be
And
fair, I don't think anybody wants that, but
yeah. And so the question is, Wesley, like, if you could give somebody just some markers, some stakes in the ground that would help guide them in leadership moving forward, help guide their inner life and to be healthy, um, maybe on a daily basis, maybe whatever. What does that look like, and be as practical as possible?
Yeah. Man, and I think about that too. Like that's a very real, like it seems really far out there, like, rape charges and stuff like that, but I'm very well aware of the evil that a human is capable of, and even the
Yeah.
best of us when we're not connected to Christ. And so um it's a really good question. And honestly, I think it goes to who you're tapped into. A lot of this may sound super super basic, but a lot of times the basics are what we need. But if you're trying to lead somebody, then you've got to ask yourself, who are you being led by? Because who you're being led by is going to carry you in a direction, and then you're going to naturally be carrying those other people in that same direction. And so that's for better or for worse. And so if you are a pastor or someone in Christian leadership, especially, and you are not um, making it a point to be in God's word daily, to refine your mind, and you're not making a point to pray daily, which it's really easy to do because frankly, if God was not real, that would be a total waste of time. You'd be
Hmm.
literally talking to the ceiling. And so you've got to, you have faith when you really actually start taking these practices
Mm.
seriously. And a lot of times, sometimes it it takes you taking those practices seriously to really build up your faith. And I know that's for me, like my faith is greatest when I am in daily prayer. And
Hmm.
so I can't think of a better way to combat what's going down, that what could come 10 years down the road, than taking the right baby steps today and
Hmm.
tomorrow and the next day. And um to get really practical with it, because we all are like really, we're busy, we have things that we've got going on, we've got families. If you want it bad enough, you will do it.
Yeah.
If you want it bad enough, you're gonna figure it out. And sometimes you've got to get creative. Like I used to, in Bible college, I knew like I was slam packed. I had no life other than studies, and that was about it. But I knew that if I didn't do exercise and I didn't pray because I was busy, the
Yeah.
likelihood of me actually doing those things when I'm not busy shrinks really low. But if I know that I did it when I was busy, then all of a
Hmm.
sudden I'm very confident that when I'm not busy, I will actually be able to maintain that. Um, and I think of like my life right now. I've got one baby, I've got a family, I've got 2 or 2.5 jobs that I'm working, and I'm constantly out. Like my wife wishes I could be home more, and so I'm incredibly busy on one hand. I also have perks on the other, because some of my job actually does allow me some freedom. But to sit and like to imagine myself standing in a room for an hour and just talking to God seems kind of unattainable. And
Hmm.
so I've had to get really creative. And so what I do is um,
Me too. Me too.
Everybody in the house hates you because you take all the warm water.
My wife's gonna watch this and be like, "Yeah."
But like that's something where I'm able to focus. Like it takes me a little bit of movement to actually be focused. And so it's like a perfect blend for me to have prayer time. I'm gonna shower every day, and so it's
Yeah.
gonna happen. And then also in my drives, like I'll listen to podcasts and I'll listen to music occasionally, but really like I, a lot of times I've just boiled down to what's going to benefit me more, listening to more Ben Shapiro, or just being in the presence of God. And I realize my anxiety goes down when I'm in the presence of God, my stress level, my priorities line up. I'm just an overall more satisfied person, and I've got more to give. And so, you
Yeah.
know, those doing that on a daily habit, I don't always get it perfect, and I don't always get it right, but trying to maintain, like trying to take steps of progress and rather than judging yourself for not reaching perfection today is I think really key in not falling backwards in 10 years.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I like Ben Shapiro as well, and I listen to him, a good bit. And I find if I don't pray every day and I listen to Ben Shapiro every day, I am very stressed.
Well, yeah, it's a guide to everything that is wrong with the country and the world.
So
Dear God, help me.
As we kind of wrap up here, Wesley, give a shout out to the church that you're working for, and any ministries you're a part of, and anything that you're working on that you'd like people to know about, and where they can find you if they're looking for you.
Yeah, Casa de Adoración is the church that I work at. It's a Latino church, and you can see them on YouTube at CDA Ministries. They're there, and they've got a online base along with their regular church attendance. And right now, we're actually in the middle of doing basically this thing where we're praying around the city of Birmingham and trying to fight the spiritual warfare that is in our area. And so it's a really big theme that Pastor
That's awesome.
Fernando has been really hitting home for the last few years. And then after that, it's actually going to come to a peak here in April. And then after that, we're going to be starting in basically just getting back to the foundations. We're going to be doing a Foundations of Faith course, a uh, a kind of overview of the Bible course, which I've been able to have the privilege of being a huge part of heading that out, and then other kind of discipleship things that we're really excited about. So
Awesome.
if you're in the Birmingham area, please visit us.
It's Birmingham, Alabama.
Yep, Birmingham, Alabama, not Europe or wherever that is.
That'd be
They've got
the
cold
UK.
beer there, but it's not the right
Awesome.
place.
Wesley, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Anything else on your end, Dylan, before we let him go?
What is you may have just said it, but I'm looking at a bunch of techie stuff over here, so I might have missed it. What is your position there with the church? What do you do?
Yeah, so it would be young adult men's minister. I don't take the title of a pastor per se, although I do shepherding, but I'm not ordained, so I don't take that. But I do work like I am.
Such as the church.
Yeah, they utilize me, but I love it. And then I also am a curriculum developer there. So we basically I say it's my wife and I we create this. We're creating these video curriculums. They're about like 8 weeks each, and that's the Foundations of Faith one and the overview of the Bible, and where we basically record and then kind of put some graphics together to try to bring it to life, and it's a lot of fun. So we're excited to be releasing that a little while into the future.
Awesome. Well,
That's
we'll
great,
be
man.
looking forward to it. We may have you on at another later date.
Yeah.
You can show us how everything's going there. But yeah, thank you, brother. You have a good rest of your evening. All right. All righty. Love you. Bye.
Love you.
See you,
Bye.
buddy.
I feel like we could have got another 3 hours. I didn't even get to. I wanted to.
You didn't even get to most of the
I
questions
know.
that you had.
I wanted to dig in so much more. Maybe we can find a way to bring him back on sometime. But
Well,
Yeah.
he is your brother, so
I mean, yeah, we can get him.
for sure we can.
I want to make it. I don't want to just. I mean, he's just going to be that third person on the podcast, basically. You mind joining us for another podcast or interviewing somebody else? No. Yeah. What was your thoughts on it?
No, like I said at the very beginning, I've known both of y'all for a long time, and
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people that we grew up with at their best and at their worst, and that includes you and includes him and your other brother. That'd be Caleb, by the way. And your sister, but I didn't really know her much. She was a lot older than me. That'd be Cheyenne. But
good for you.
I'm good with names.
I can't remember their names half the time.
Not really. I'm terrible with names. I've just known y'all long enough that I remember them. But yeah, no, I've seen the whole grow up process. Y'all seen most of mine. So it was good to see him where he is now, because I haven't really been able to keep up with him as an adult as much as I'd like to. Plus he lives away from here, so it's a little bit harder to stay connected. But it was good to see where he's at, what he's doing, where he's landed. And I'm very happy with for him.
Yeah.
And proud of him. And it's got a lot less hair than I remember.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say that at the time.
He would have been fine with it.
I know he would.
I do it. I'm headed that way. So.
He's got a good enough beard. I think he makes up for it. He's got the Jason Statham thing going on.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I'm holding on to my hair. I got that from
good for you, man.
My granddad had good hair on my dad's side and on my mom's side. My dad's hair's thinning a little bit, but he's still hanging in there pretty good. I'm still doing better than him. My dad was completely gray by the time he was like 35. Yeah. 25, he was already had that salt and pepper, distinguished look going on.
Wow.
And me, I have very few gray hairs. Most of my gray's in my beard. I do have a lot of gray in my beard, but no, anyway, getting off track, but he is good to see that he not only has he found himself in these positions like we were talking about at the beginning, but he understands the importance of those positions.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. And he's also very clearly aware of himself, which is a very important quality to have in a leader. A lot of leaders lose that self-awareness. Hey, I'm slipping in this area. Yeah, and he has that self-awareness to go, oh, wait a minute, something ain't quite right. I need to make some adjustments. And then he adjusts and continues on.
He was talking about just like the mentorship he has around him and who he's looking to and stuff like that. And like, I've seen that in his life and I love it because it takes the boxes off of who he is. And like he just has an ever, like in a good way, an ever evolving understanding of like who Jesus is, who he is as an individual, who, like who the church is and how he can best engage. And like, I mean, once that guy gets his mind set on what is truth, like it's that's a hard conversation to try to convince him else otherwise. Like it's very unlikely to happen.
To be fair, can be a dangerous thing if you get your mindset on the wrong truth.
True. And so,
not saying he does. I'm just saying that kind of quality.
He's just very stubborn by nature, and he's got this ability though, as he's grown for sure, that he is open to understanding that he doesn't have everything figured out. And I think the first time I really recognized that was when we kind of got back together after, like, I had been in Kentucky for a while. He had been in Nashville and in Wyoming doing awesome stuff there. But we ended up coming back to Nashville and together. And I just like immediately I was like, dude, this dude's different. Like, he believes different things. He's gone through a lot since we've met, and we got to have some really good conversations about, where that came from, like where his like worldview that he was, I don't even know if it was taught to him or taught to us. It was the worldview that we accumulated over our childhood and early adulthood. And, it came to a point where he recognized at the end of the day, I'm responsible for my relationship with Jesus and how I interact with this world. And I was just super, just super like blessed to see the growth that he had on an individual basis, owning who he was, and you know living into that. And so that's a lot of that has to do with what he was talking about, is mentorship and knowing who you're around. I think we hear a lot of times in the leadership guru space, you are a average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that is true financially, that is true, leadership style, that's true spiritually. And
my dad used to tell me growing up, if you want to be a bank robber, hang out with bank robbers.
That's
you
it.
Want to, you want to be rich, hang out with rich
I
people.
knew I had the wrong friends.
Right? Yeah. No, that explains so much. That's what he always used to tell me, and it's very true. If you look at, I've seen that in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
I've seen people that were great. I don't want to.
You're not going to throw shade on me. Go ahead.
All right, cool. All right, then I'm just going to go in for the kill here.
Do it.
During your teenage years.
Yes.
During your teenage years, who were you hanging out with the most?
Oh man, we won't drop names. But
no names, no names.
Yeah. I mean, I made a point to be around, my focus was, let's get around idiots who did a lot of drugs, who did a lot of stupid stuff, and that was, where
maybe not on purpose, but that's
actually,
who you kind of.
I remember making the decision moving back from Costa Rica in the U.S. I was like, I do not like anybody around here, and the only people that I connect with are like are like people in poverty. Because like that was kind of like, I don't know where it was. I wasn't in poverty in Costa Rica. I was in a second world country, but we were Americans, right? But I wanted to associate with them more than Americans. And so I said,
they have a different mentality.
Yeah. And so like, I don't know. I looked around and I said, hey, those guys don't fit in here either. They're getting in a lot of trouble. They're doing a lot of stupid stuff. I'm going to hang out with them. And so like I made a kind of purposeful decision. And then as I got older, I was like who's got the most drugs? Who's got the more?
Well, that was once you were already.
Yeah.
Once you were already in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Then you got to find your, who can supply you with what you need. But going into it, a lot of people fall into it by accident.
Mm-hmm.
Some people fall into it because they're dealing with something in their life. They don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
I would like to have our wives on here sometime.
We should.
Separately.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's not because they don't get along.
No. They get along absolutely fine. They work together, but it's like, I would like to get a word in sometimes. We'll make sure they don't see this episode.
I don't think they watch. I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
No, but for real though, like it's I don't want to tell too much of mine's story.
Yeah.
But it's similar to yours.
Yeah.
And she went through rehab and she got clean. She's been clean for a number of years now and all that kind of stuff. So she's comfortable talking about it and wants to talk about it because she feels like it'll help somebody.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're saying that. I was going to ask you about that. So
okay, well there you go. We'll plan it. Maybe that'll be the next guest we have.
Maybe
is them.
Yeah, and Christine's got a really good story as well.
Yes. So but looking at that, I've told all of that is to say what I was trying to say to begin with is I told her, she looks at people that have addiction problems
Mm.
differently than I do. I look at it from a very kind of hard-nosed standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not because I'm not understanding. I was an alcoholic for
Yeah.
several years and have now been sober for, as the recording of this, for 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. I can't remember exactly. My wife knows. But I look at it as, listen, you have that problem. Most people
Yeah.
say have that problem because you don't have a spine.
Mm.
And I know that sounds very harsh,
Mm.
but I look at it from my point of view.
Yeah.
Which was, I was trying to learn how to deal with stuff that I didn't know how to deal with. The way I knew how to deal with it was drink whatever's in that bottle or that can, and I'll feel like me again.
Yeah.
The young me, the me before all the crap
Yeah.
piled down on top of me. And I was talkative, and I was laughing, and I was funny, and I was the person I wanted to be, the person I used to be long, long ago and long lost.
Yeah.
And so after I got sober, it was I looked at it as you were weak because you couldn't be you without whatever was in that bottle or that can. And so I look at addicts of every sort, whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever, from that same kind of perspective. You're trying to cover up something and make yourself feel better by using these things. And you don't know how to deal with hard situations in life without the assistance of something else.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, that's not true. They're this. And I'm like, really look at it.
Yeah.
What were you doing talking to her?
Yeah.
I said, what were you running from?
Yeah.
What was it that happened? Because I knew already.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it here. It's not mine to say. It's hers.
Yeah.
But what happened before the drinking started?
Yeah.
Before the drugs started? What happened? And she told me, which I already knew, but she told me again. And I said, how long did it take you to get over that?
Yeah.
To deal with it?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I didn't. I said, right. When did you start dealing with it?
Yeah.
She said, after rehab, after I got clean. I said, exactly.
Yeah.
You were running. Mm-hmm. And it's a harsh thing to say.
It's
but
not.
To me, well, for the person like you, it was a little bit different.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and I think.
And I'm not saying I was right. I'm not saying I was right. I'm just saying that's the way I looked at it.
I mean,
let me make that clear.
You have to also realize that addiction is.
I think it has a disease side to it as well. It has a DNA aspect to it, I think.
It does, but it also it is not. I never want anybody, because I've worked in the drug rehab space, and it's not a popular view, but the studies, the numbers, the statistics that do not lie show that this is something that can be overcome, and it can be done with, and you can be renewed, right? And so you don't have to live every single day thinking that there's this uncontrollable force lurking behind the next corner that is going to take control of you. When people say that it is a disease, they get the idea that this is the same thing as dealing with diabetes or something that is outside of your control most of the time, and that you have to work around that. That's not what the stats say. And I don't think we're ever going to get into this, but I don't care to talk about it. But when we look at the studies behind that, and we look about why it was called the disease in the first place, a lot of it had to do with a certain organization trying to get funding so that they could get paid to do what they were doing.
Well, and why don't you just go ahead and name who it is? I don't know. I hadn't
So
I
yeah,
mean, we're all about ruffling
sure,
feathers
sure,
here,
sure.
so just ruffle
So
some
what we're
feathers.
looking at is the anonymous group. So AA did they were the ones who started the push to make it a disease, and it was because they wanted funding from uh, the insurance agencies to be able to fund what they were doing. And you follow the money trail down there. Leaders of AA end up getting very corrupted. End up using that as a platform to gain a lot of wealth. So we
So
have that.
basically, they're using insurance money
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
line their own pockets.
Yeah. So from a lot of
Gotcha.
the research, and this isn't like, it may not be well known now. When I was doing this, you look at, the AA book that's used. It's very, like, the study on the lives of those who wrote it is very eye opening.
Well, I think you also look at the uh, um, the statistics of people who go through AA versus a faith-based
Atrocious
thing.
Yeah.
And the number of people who actually get sober and stay sober from AA is abysmal.
Yeah, it's last study, and to my knowledge, the only study, because they never did another study. When I was looking at this in 2013, 2014, the actual percentage of people that got sober and stayed sober until death was under 2%. So we translate
that's from AA.
We translate that over to, or we shift over and we look at faith-based organizations that do not have the foundation of, this is a disease that you're going to be dealing with the rest of your life. Faith-based organizations say, hey, this is a problem that is based in sin, and we can take this issue to Jesus, and you can become a new creation, and you can walk free from this. 60 to 80% success rate of sobriety until death. And
Well, it's looking at the problem from an idea of, here's how you handle your life issues without drugs, without alcohol.
Yeah,
there is somebody, something,
mm-hmm.
You don't know what it is yet, but we're going to introduce you.
Yeah.
They will help you.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And
we're going to teach you how to go through the storm.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to find a way around it.
Yeah.
There's no successful way around a storm.
Yeah. You've got to get through it. And there is a really good, this is kind of like what was starting this, but the addiction itself is, it's when we see it in drugs and alcohol, right, or pornography, we're seeing something that is pushed to a very high level. Addiction starts way sooner than that, right? Because addiction is, like you were saying, this is a distraction from the reality of what we're dealing with. Those distractions come way before we decide to go over the edge. If we make that a habit where we're trying to be distracted by games, trying to be distracted by sports and hobbies, trying to be distracted by relationships, whatever it is, or our job, success, when we don't know who we are, and we don't we don't go to our healer to find healing for the issues, we're going to have side effects of those issues. And until that issue is dealt with, we're just putting band-aids on a problem. And oftentimes an untreated problem becomes more and more infected.
Yeah.
So,
and it, to bring it kind of back, it is the self-awareness to look at yourself and say, hey, man,
yeah,
maybe I don't have it all together.
Yeah.
And take the steps to get fixed. I know it seems like we went off on a rabbit trail there, and that is because we did. But it is also, still,
this podcast should be called Chasing Rabbits.
Well, I think it's well, that is true. But it's also because in some ways it still lines up. And the reason I say that is because I saw where you were.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some of the things that Wesley dealt with.
Yeah.
To end up where you are now.
Yeah.
To end up where I am now. Like, one of my favorite sayings is, it doesn't matter where you start.
Yeah.
It matters where you finish.
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't care.
Yeah.
Where you start.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, he's not holding where you start against you.
Yeah. It's the value it's totally different than we see on this earth. Where we're starting is not. I mean, you just look at Jesus, right? He was sent here to change the entire, trajectory of humanity, and he started in a very humble position, and so that is not at all the valuation that we see when it comes to our relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, well, as people, we look at somebody's past, we look at where they start, their start line,
Yeah,
and we look at it and say, why would I listen to that guy?
yeah,
He used to be a drug addict
mm-hmm,
or an alcoholic or
yeah,
whatever the problem was. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. There's a million of them. But God looks at it and says, yeah,
mm-hmm,
that's exactly the point.
yeah,
That's what I want. I want somebody who had these issues
mm-hmm,
because there's two words in the Bible that are very important
mm-hmm,
to every human being on earth. We throw them around a lot, but we don't really know what they mean.
yeah,
It's redemption and
absolute. Just kidding.
absolute power. No. I'll have to edit this part out because I can't remember the other word.
It's okay.
Delivered. That's it. That is redemption and delivered. Those two words are extremely important, and God is very big on both of those points.
Mm-hmm.
You can be redeemed from anything, and you can be delivered from anything.
Yeah.
And having somebody who has been delivered and redeemed
mm-hmm.
from really is as weird as it sounds, from God's perspective, hey, the more the better.
Mm.
Because I know somebody who is a pastor
mm-hmm.
now that did, I don't even remember how many years in prison for murder.
Yeah.
He used to go to our church. I don't remember him. Anyway. And like that to me is, and to God, is a huge deal. You mean you were in prison as a murderer and now you're a pastor.
Yeah.
And there's so many people who will look at that and say, why would I want to go to a church pastored by a murderer? Because he's not a murderer anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did that, but that's not who he is.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even who he was.
Yeah.
It's something he did.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody can be redeemed.
Yeah.
I challenge anybody who watches this, and you too, to do some research on the son of Sam.
Yeah.
Serial killer from New York City in the 70s, I want to say. Something like that. I think it was 72, 73. He killed around somewhere between 5 and 8 people. I can't remember exactly. His name is David Berkowitz. He is a massive example, a perfect example of what delivered and redeemed means.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, I think. He's on that all the time. They call him and stuff, giving his testimony and just talking to him. He's still in prison, and he will be for the rest of his life. And to listen to him talk, he's like, yeah, that's what I deserve, and that's where I need to be.
Yeah.
Because of what I did. He actually tried to stop going to the parole hearings because he was like, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't deserve to be paroled. And they got mad at him, so he had to keep going back. They're like, you have to come. He's like, fine, I'll go. But he is such an amazing person.
Yeah.
But, if you look at it from an earthly perspective, he's just a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most notorious serial killers, most famous serial killers. But in reality, he is a great person.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets thousands of letters from suicidal people who are reaching out. They saw him on CBN, and they're looking for somebody to help them.
Yeah.
And he handwrites them letters back. You matter.
Yeah.
And he ends up sticking with them and following them through the process. The reason I say all that is because he is a great example of what redemption and deliverance means.
Yeah.
And it took him years to forgive himself. He still kind of deals with it, as you would expect.
Sure.
I mean, I still am working on forgiving myself for things I've done. Like that's part of it. But having that self-awareness to say, there has to be something better than what I've been trying. That is a great example, important quality of a leader.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been doing doesn't work.
Yeah.
Adaptation.
Yeah.
I need to shift. I
Yeah.
need to change something. Adapting.
It's that humility that we talked about.
Yeah. And that's an important quality of a leader, to be able to look at yourself, say, all right, what I'm doing isn't working. How do I need to change it? What do I need to do to right the ship and carry on? Because if the leadership ain't right, the organization, the company, the household, the church, whatever it is, ain't going to work.
Yeah.
You're going to bring it down with you. Great example of that, Blockbuster.
They busted up,
Two chances to get Netflix.
Really?
Oh, yeah. 2 chances to get Netflix.
That's rough.
And they passed on both.
Wow.
And we see which one won.
Yeah. Something you were mentioning about how, regardless of where you're at, what you've done, and, your words, the more the better. Like,
that's not an excuse to go be stupid,
exactly.
by the way.
I use that. I'm just going to be honest with you. I use that as an excuse. When I was a teenager, I saw Nikki Cruz talk on I saw Nikki Cruz speak live, and if you don't know who he is, he, I believe, co-authored the book The Switch and the Switchblade. What is it? The Don't Run Baby Run is another one. Man, I can't remember the second one, but Nikki Cruz, awesome dude. He grew up a gangster and an enforcer for a gang. Just deep. Mother was a witch. I think ran away like young, like 8 years old from home, started living on the street. So a lot of stuff going on in his life. God gets a hold of him because of a pastor who felt a call to leave his family states away to go minister to these gangs in, I believe, New York. And the faithfulness of that man saw a revival break out in these gangs. And Nikki Cruz is speaking, and I'm hearing this dude's story, and I'm like, I'm gonna keep going. One day, I'm gonna have a testimony like that. And don't do that. That's stupid. I regret ever thinking that. The wasted life that was between then and when I got saved is ridiculous. The amount of people
I've heard that before from other friends of mine.
Man, such
they
a
were
lie.
like, well, the reason I did that was because so I would have a testimony.
Such a lie. Such a lie.
That is a huge lie. That's just Satan sitting there saying, hey, just jump off that cliff. It'll look really cool when you don't die when you hit the ground. Like, no, buddy, you're going to hit the ground and it's going to suck.
You want to talk about, like, all it says is you're massively unwise. Like, if you're going to sit here and tell me the reason I decided not to start making money now was because I wanted to, make middle income wage later on in life and be really proud of it. Like, that is the dumbest idea. Like, chase the riches while you have all the zeal and all the power you have now. And
the Bible even says when you're young, versus when you're old. When you're young, you go out hunting. When you're old, you divide the spoils. That means when you're young and you're vital and you have the energy to go do it, go do it.
When
you're old, you can chill and eat the food,
Yeah, so much treasure and gifts in Jesus. So don't waste the season that you're in waiting for another one to come. But what you were saying is, it's kind of true. Like, the reality is that regardless of who you are, we're lost. We're sinners when we, like, before we know Jesus, we're sinners, right? And sin is despicable because it separates us from God. And the purpose of Jesus coming to this earth was to bring us back into union with God. And so John 3:17, for God didn't come into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. And so when we look at, hey, I've messed up, I'm doing some stupid stuff, I know I'm not right, like, understand that relationship doesn't start with condemnation. It starts with redemption, with salvation, with coming to that place of humility first and understanding, hey, I've messed up, and then you walk into this life that's given to you. Not, oh man, I've messed up and now I have to pay the penance the rest of my life for all my wrongdoings. I mean, there are, consequences that happen just because that's how this world works. But your soul does not need to be continually in bondage, because of the sin in your life. Like God has come, like Jesus has come to save us and not to leave us in condemnation. So, if you've done a lot of junk, just look at it. Look, Satan's telling you you're no good. You don't have anything left in you. The reality is that weakness just shows the greatness of God all the more. So, give it to him. Let him heal, let him work through you and build a life in you that you didn't even know existed. Like Dylan knows who I was a whole lot better than, a lot of people. And like I said earlier, like it is like two different lives. It is a totally different place. So
I remember the first time I talked to you after you went off to college and
yeah.
all that stuff. You came back for a visit and you were like, you texted me or you saw me at church, something, I don't remember. We ended up talking. You're like, man, I'd love to get together and talk. And I was like, yeah, man, that's cool. And we did. And I was like, man, you're using a lot of words you didn't used to use. You're using words like fellowship, redemption, and all kind of stuff. Like, how do you know all these verses like this? I don't, this isn't you, man. Like, and I was like, all right, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, that
We'll
was
see.
that was
And
honestly the
that
whole
was
thing.
how long that was.
Everyone was like, we'll see.
That was, I don't even remember how many years ago it was now, but it's been a while.
That'd be what, 2012?
Yeah.
I graduated in 2011 from high school, so yeah, 13 maybe. I don't know.
Well, no, when you college.
College, yeah.
It wasn't. It was.
Well, it would have been after my first year in college, I think.
Yeah, but it was. It was a little while after that that you and me got
Gotcha.
together. So it was.
I remember
14, maybe 15.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, but it was a big difference, and it stayed that way. And
Yeah,
that's the impressive part is the consistency afterward, and that's the point of a changed life. Is once it's changed, that doesn't mean you don't have struggles. It doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It just means that your
personality. I'm still an idiot.
Yeah, it's just an idiot in a different way. I'm still an idiot too, just in different ways.
I don't hurt people anymore.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's yeah, I think this was an awesome episode. I think there was a lot that I gleaned from it for sure.
Yeah, I was very happy with it, and I think all of that's great. And I tell you what, I'm happy that I got to reconnect with your brother a little bit, and hopefully we'll have him back on soon. And
maybe next time we can run down there and do it in person.
Yeah, that'd be much preferred.
Yeah,
not just from a friendship standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are you doing? That showed up, man.
Did it? I'm sorry.
I'm telling you what, this dude.
Itching my shin.
Talk about an idiot. I'm just kidding. No, but happy to do this with you and see him again.
Yeah.
For a little bit, and thank you all for joining. Go click all the buttons, all the subscriptions, and actually, no, we don't have any subscriptions yet, but hit the thing so you know that when we post something, you get it. That thing.
Yeah.
On Facebook, on YouTube, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, on.
And you can
what's
just
the other one? iHeart.
Comment in there which one of us look better, me or my brother.
You know how we were talking about the idiot thing? Some traits don't leave you, that kind of thing. Vanity is a very hard one to.
Oh, well, it's not vanity as much as competition. So I think that's probably the same line.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. He's just wanting to hear that he still has hair.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be gone soon. So
his brother doesn't.
We'll be like.
Does
twins.
Caleb still have hair?
I mean, is
he on his way too?
He's on his way. We're all on our way.
That's all right. Just own it, man.
Sister.
Just own it. Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to own it. But
But
You know,
yeah,
I don't have a youth group like Wesley did when he shaved his head. He made it a whole competition and was like, that's what all the youth pastors are doing, Wesley.
Yeah,
It's
really.
like their excuse to go bald.
Yep. They want to go with the Jason Statham.
Yeah, it's like,
or the Bruce
my
Willis.
my youth did it. They made me do it.
Well, that explains why you shaved it, but why have you kept it shaved for 5 years?
Yeah.
But no, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again soon. But this next episode coming up, you need to listen to it or watch it. Actually, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it on YouTube, go to YouTube and see it. That way you can see us. You can see what we look like.
Yeah.
And see the fact that JJ has a better beard, but I have better hair.
True.
But yeah, if you haven't seen it, go to YouTube and check it out. Full episodes are there. It's free, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But this next episode you need to watch/listen because we start diving into some really fun stuff with one. Actually, no, I'm not going to say the name. You can just wait till it drops and then go watch it.
Yeah,
it's going to be a fun rabbit trail. It's going to be
fun. Yeah.
Well, fun in a bad way. I
mean,
it's not a good subject matter. I mean, this is a show about human trafficking, but
I love a good rabbit trail to go down, and this is filled with it.
Oh yeah, and it's a lot of fun, and it's also very informative, and yeah, you just need to check it out. So we'll see you then, JJ.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Bye.
Bye.